Welcome back to the Root, the podcast that unpacks the truth behind women's health and healing from within. Today we're talking about the kind of tiredness that no amount of rest can fix. It's the kind that seeps into your bones, dulls your focus, and makes even the smallest task feel like climbing a mountain. That's right, we're talking about iron deficiency anemia. Before we get started, two really quick disclaimers. Number one, I am not a medical professional and this is not medical advice. Everything that I mention within this podcast is based on my own personal experience. And number two, as Q-Tip said, occasionally I curse to get my point across. So if you have young kids in the background, I would recommend that you wear headphones, or if curse words offend you, feel free to exit left right about now. Okay, let's get into it. So I feel like I need to address the elephant in the room. And that elephant is the fact that this episode is 2 weeks late. Before I even started this podcast journey, I remember speaking to my friend Celia, and she gave me some fantastic advice. She said, Bianca, it's a really good idea to batch create some of your content so that at least if you're unwell or you want to go on holiday, or maybe you just become really, really busy and you don't have time to record a podcast, you'll have that content there ready to go. And I was like, yeah, Celia, that is a really good idea. I'm going to do that. Did I do it? No, I did not. So the past few weeks have been really intense, and it's completely thrown my schedule and my normal routine out of the window. And what I found is that I've needed to take time out to just focus on my health and my well-being. And unfortunately, that meant not having time to focus on a podcast. Whereas if I'd listened to Celia in the first place, I would have had episodes that I could have released whilst I was unwell. But here we are, and I apologize. But this is the perfect segue into the topic that we're talking about today. So we're talking about iron deficiency anemia. And for the past couple of weeks, I have had zero energy, and I've had to really work hard to try and build that back up because my iron levels were quite low. Anyway, I don't think that I have met any woman who has fibroids who isn't also anemic. The two kind of go hand in hand, which is something that I didn't know about until obviously all of my health issues started and I had to really go deep and actually learn about it. But for women that don't know, I'm just going to give you a basic overview of iron and why it's so important, especially when it comes to fibroids. So iron is a key component within the body, and it facilitates so many different functions within that body. It aids muscle function, your immune system support, your energy levels, amino acid metabolism. But the key thing that it's responsible for is the transportation of oxygen around your body. So I am not a doctor or a nurse by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not even a teacher. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a primary level school understanding of how this all fits together, because I know that I was completely lost in terms of why am I iron deficient? Like how does it all come together? So this is what I know. Our blood is made up of several different cells. You have your red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. So if you're iron deficient, it's your red blood cells that are affected. And just to break this down just a little bit further, within those red blood cells, you will have a protein called hemoglobin, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. And it's actually the hemoglobin that is responsible for transporting the oxygen around the body. And the way that it does this is with iron atoms. So the iron within your body, or within the hemoglobin, will bind to the oxygen, and that's how it will get to the tissues within your body. Therefore, it's really, really important. If you don't have iron, or you don't have enough iron within your body, then girl, you in danger. You in real problems. This explains why so many women who have fibroids will also be diagnosed with iron deficiency anemia, because they tend to have heavy menstrual flows each month. And it can be a real battle of trying to increase and maintain your iron levels while also trying to shrink your fibroids, which is not easy if you don't know what you're doing. One of the most common side effects of anemia is your lack of energy. But I need to make this distinction because people get it confused. They're like, oh, you're a little bit tired. No, there's tiredness and then there's anemia. Okay. Think of a time when you have been so exhausted that you could fall asleep standing up. Now I want you to times that by 100 and put a backpack full of rocks on your back as you climb uphill. That is anemia, okay? Anemia will have you laying in your bed contemplating, do I have enough energy to even roll over? Never mind getting out of bed and standing up. It is that bad. In addition to this, you will also have other symptoms such as shortness of breath. You may have chest pain, brain fog, pale skin, cold hands and feet. Maybe you'll have thinning hair or even brittle nails. Those are the common side effects. However, there are three uncommon side effects which not a lot of people talk about, but I've had all three. And they are pica, which is a craving for ice or clay like substances. It's also muscle pain and ringing in the ears. So I'll start with the pica. So for about 2 years, I had an unhealthy addiction to cacao nibs. And I guess there are worse things that I could be addicted to, but it literally came out of nowhere where I'd never eaten cacao nibs. And then all of a sudden, I just really needed something that tasted quite earthy and like rock. It was ridiculous. And it got so bad to the point where I remember traveling to see family for a weekend and I forgot to bring my cacao nibs with me on the train. And I was freaking out because I was like, what am I going to do for a whole weekend if I can't have my cacao nibs? It was that deep. But this was my body's way of telling me that I was lacking in certain nutrients. And although it might seem like a bizarre craving to me, my body was highly intelligent enough to say, you need this, eat this. As gross as I found it at the time, my body needed it and it was telling me, which I think is fascinating. And then there's the muscle pain. So the muscles within your legs are the largest muscles within your body. So obviously, if you're anemic, your body is having to work overtime. And this is why people who have severe anemia will experience leg cramp. It's normally within the calves. And then when it gets really bad, it will travel up to the tops of the legs. At that point, you really do need to go and see a doctor because there's something terribly wrong there. And then the final one is the ringing in the ears. This is always confused with tinnitus, and it's not actually tinnitus. What's actually happening, just like with the legs, your body is having to work overtime to get the oxygen, what little oxygen it can, around the body to your tissues. And your ears are really sensitive to the difference in blood flow. And that's why you'll get that hissing sound within your ears when you're anemic. This is why I commend any woman who tells me that she's anemic and she is also a mother of young children. She works full time, or maybe she's a carer of elderly relatives, or she does most of the housework around the house, because having anemia is no joke. And a part of me doesn't even really want to say that because I'm really trying to break away from this narrative or this stereotype of the strong Black woman, because in my opinion, this is part of the reason that we ended up in this situation in the first place, that we're pushing through health concerns and not listening to our body when we should be resting. But as I said, if you have anemia and you're doing all of these other things on top of this, then you truly are a soldier and it is time for you to rest and rest without guilt. I think back to a time when I used to commute 2 hours a day from Essex all the way out to Gatwick. And for those who are wondering how far that is, just know that it's fucking far. So I would do 2 hours in the morning there, do a full day's work, and then I would do 2 hour commute back. And I did that for so long. And when I think back, I don't even know how I managed to get through it because I was so unwell and I could hardly stand up. I could hardly breathe. I couldn't walk up steps. I used to have to take the lift to the first floor in the office. It was ridiculous. And, it's a little bit embarrassing to admit that, but I admit that to you so you will understand that it's so important to listen to your body. I pushed my body to the absolute limit and I paid the price for it. So, for anybody who's listening and you recognize yourself in some of the things that I'm saying, please take a moment to just sit down and just think about it. Because if you don't have your health, you have nothing. So, it's really important to put your health first. I can only speak about the UK in terms of medical advice that we receive to deal with the symptoms of fibroids. So, in places such as America or Canada or wherever you're listening from, it may be very different, but over here, the information is limited at best. And this is probably why a lot of women, they get to a stage in their healing journey and they're tired of being gaslit by these doctors and being told the only solution is a hysterectomy or birth control. So they decide to pay and go private. I myself went private back in, I think it was roughly 2019. I was working for a company at the time that offered private healthcare, and I was like, great, I'm going to go and get everything sorted because it's clearly not working out on the NHS. I'm going to go down there and I'm going to get them to run every single test and I'm going to heal myself. At that time, I had been suffering from really bad leg pain that just would not go away. I now know that that was due to my anemia, but I didn't know back then. So I rock up to the Shard feeling all kinds of posh and important. And can I just say, if you've never been to the Shard or you've never had private healthcare, that you cannot knock the service. They may not necessarily heal you, but the service is fantastic. Anyway, back to the point. I have all of my tests done. And I sit down with the consultant and he says to me, you have fibroids. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I hadn't gone there for that. I'd gone there for my legs. And he said, the pains in your legs are due to sciatica. And even as he said that to me, I was thinking, no, it's not. This doesn't make any kind of sense. But he's a doctor. And at that time, what I would do is just give away my power to anybody in a white coat because they clearly know a lot more than me about my own body. So I walk away with my really expensive medication and my sciatica diagnosis. But it just didn't sit well with me for weeks. It was just something that was just playing on my mind. And I was like, I do not have sciatica. So I decided to do my own research. And ironically, what I came across was an NHS article that was explaining the uncommon side effects of anemia, one of those being muscle pain due to anemia. And it all made sense. And I say all of this to say that it doesn't matter if it's an NHS doctor or if it's a private doctor. Sometimes they will just not be able to connect the dots. And this is why it's really important for you to take a front seat role in your health. You're not there to just be gaslit and dictated to. You know your body better than anybody else, and you really do need to take control as much as you possibly can. Obviously, you do get guidance from medical professionals, but at the same time, you have to do your own research and do what works best for you. And what I found that works best for me is actually to have foods that are rich in iron rather than having iron tablets. Iron tablets did nothing for me. And my anemia was quite severe to the point where I've had to have iron infusions. But what works for me is actually having a diet that is rich in iron, which was one of the reasons that I actually put together my Cooking for Iron ebook, because I had no concept of all of these foods that were rich in iron, if I'm honest with you, apart from spinach. And when you actually look into it, spinach is way down on the list in terms of how much iron you can actually get from it. But regardless, it is a good source of iron. So if this is something that you need help with, I will leave the details down below. Some of the foods that I absolutely love outside of spinach is liver, which I know not everybody will love liver, but it's an acquired taste and you really have to just season it well. So there's also cannelloni beans, which are high in iron. Pistachios are high in iron. So many other things which are also listed within my ebook, as well as recipes that you can use on a daily basis. So I hope this information has been helpful for you. But I really want to hear from you. I really want to know about your experiences, whether it's in the UK or it's other countries. How have you been treated in terms of your fibroid diagnosis? What have you found that works for you? If you have a story that you want to tell about your fibroids or about iron deficiency anemia, I will leave my details below. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.